On November 18, 1978, in Jonestown, a preacher named Jim Jones served a cyanide-laced fruit punch to all 900 of his followers. The adults did not begin to take from the poisonous drink until the children finished drinking and were confirmed to be dead. Whether voluntarily or forcefully, more than 900 cultists, including more than 200 children, were soon lying lifeless on the ground. Jones too was dead with a gunshot wound to the head. Hearing about this tragic massacre, one can't help but wonder, how do some leaders manage to manipulate and exploit hundreds of people? How do these capable and intellectual people end up in a cult so disruptive? It seems that there can be a theoretical answer to this. Even though not all leaders fit into a single category, leadership styles are commonly divided into transactional and transformational leadership. The transactional leadership style is based on the exchange between a leader and a subordinate, while transformational leaders are the ones who influence followers by establishing a vision for a better future. They are inspiring and lead by example. There are also additional leadership styles such as spiritual or ideological. For this topic, we're going to focus on charismatic leadership. Now, personalized charismatic leaders are seen by their followers as having extraordinary abilities and qualities. In reality, they are authoritative narcissists with a high need for power. These leaders are self-seeking and manipulative. They engage in unethical behavior such as the Jonestown Incident in 1978. This is referred to as the dark side of charisma. Former cult member and sociology professor Yania Lalich defines cults via 4 interlocking dimensions: charismatic authority, a transcendent belief system, systems of control, and systems of influence. A cult can consist of as few as 2 people, as long as it is held together through a shared commitment and a charismatic leader. The truth is, most cults go unnoticed and undiagnosed. It is a common phenomenon for followers to not acknowledge or accept that they are in fact in a cult. American psychologist Robert Cialdini famously recognizes 6 universal principles of influence. When used together, he believes that these principles can be powerful enough to generate any desirable change no matter the circumstances. All 6 of these have been historically used by cult leaders. The first 3 principles are reciprocation, commitment and consistency, and authority. The 4th principle, social validation, is by far the most common phenomenon in cults. With validation, members fail to either question the motives and morals of their surroundings or act when they are having reasonable doubts. Then there is scarcity. This principle is used frequently in cults, usually in recruitment and provoking false hope. In some cases, members have the illusion that they are the chosen ones, feeling lucky and special to be included. Finally, the last principle of influence is liking and friendship. Many cult leaders make use of this principle by actively seeming honest and friendly to their followers. Being charismatic leaders, gaining the followers' fondness doesn't seem to be a difficulty for most cult leaders. In the book Freedom of Mind, Stephen Hassan explains how the bite method, when used correctly, can gain control over a person's identity and promote dependency and obedience. It consists of 4 elements. Firstly, behavior control is the regulation of a person's physical environment and conduct. In cults, this can go as far as sleep deprivation, restricted diets, invasion of privacy, or isolation. I stands for information control, regulating a person's access to non-cult and unaltered information. Some extreme cases even include manipulation of memory and implementation of false memories. T comes from thought control. Required to internalize the group's doctrine, cult members are taught thought-stopping techniques such as chanting, meditating, praying, etc. And finally, E comes from emotional control. Some cult leaders make their followers feel special by showering them with praise, while others create dependency by making the followers feel guilty and pressured to think of the group and not themselves. Sarah Edmondson was a young actress in her late 20s when she was recruited into NXIVM. She believed that it was a personal development organization with hopes to rekindle her purpose in life. NXIVM, however, was a cult operating with a pyramid-shaped social hierarchy, with founder Keith Rainier on top. Keith was a very calculated cult leader. He was charismatic and charming. Edmondson explains in her book how the members, expecting personal growth, experienced emotional control and were being taught that they were the causing agents of everything in their lives. This framework ensured that they took total responsibility of their own abuse. and never viewed themselves as victims. Early in 2017, Sarah Edmondson was invited into a secret women's subgroup. The participants valued this program for its scarcity and secrecy. Edmondson tells how they were required to provide collateral in the form of damaging nude photos or false video confessions used as blackmail to ensure their lifelong obedience. During an activity called the branding ritual, the women were ordered to have a wound sign branded on their pelvic area. Later, Edmondson realized that the sign was the initials of Keith Rainier smudged together. She believes that this was done to create a trauma bond between the cult members. Being referred to as slaves, the participants were under complete behavioral control. They were given assignments such as seducing Keith or providing sexual services. Otherwise, they faced punishments ranging from paddling to being locked in a human-sized cage. In May 2017, Edmondson fled and eventually contacted the FBI. By 2019, Keith Rainier was convicted on all accounts, including sex trafficking and racketeering. He was sentenced to 120 years in prison. The ethical aspect in leadership does not depend on the leader's style, whether transactional or transformational. It is rather based on the leader's level of moral development or the extent to which the employed influence process is motivated by ethical values. Studying the cases of manipulative cults highlights the darker side of influence, power, and authority. As we understand the psychological persuasion techniques and leadership methods that go into committing unethical acts, such as the Jonestown Incident or the Case of NXIVM, one can recognize the patterns of manipulation. It is essential to evaluate the leadership in organizations and society according to these patterns, to ensure that influence is used to empower rather than control.